Name is Keith Parker, triple OG from the Inglewood Chain Gang. That's Inglewood, California.
Where was you born at?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois.
And when did you move to Inglewood?
I moved to Inglewood in January 1971. So first I moved from Chicago in 1970 and moved to Carson, California. I was going to Curtis Junior High School at Carson, then we left there and moved to Inglewood. I was going to Monroe Junior High School in Inglewood.
Okay, so you didn't go to elementary in LA?
No, I didn't. I went to elementary school in Chicago.
Okay, and then you get to Monroe in 1971?
Yes, 1971, January 71. I was like a month before that big earthquake hit in February.
What was the population like at that school as far as race goes?
The population at that time was about 75% white, 25% black.
So you moved to Inglewood and there was still a lot of whites?
Without a doubt, it was predominantly white when I moved there. But by the time I graduated from high school in '75, it was the other way around. It was 95% black and maybe 5% Hispanic.
Are you familiar with the term Crips or West Side Crips?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the term West Side Crips. I got understanding of the West Side Crips, I say at the end of the summer of '71. And they, at first it was just one word. It was just Crips. As far as I knew, it wasn't really split up to my knowledge. My knowledge at that time, it was just the Crips.
Okay, when do you first hear of Inglewood Crips?
I didn't hear about the Inglewood Crips until, I'm gonna say '74. So the term Inglewood Crips wasn't even used. We had Crips that were in Inglewood, actually at Morningside, but they wasn't going by that title.
So as far as you know, it was a term that was added later.
It was a term that was added later, and I think it was just added because it was like a geographical thing that they actually lived in Inglewood. But I believe they pretty much more or less socialized with the West Side Crips.
When did you first hear of the Chain Gang?
The Chain Gang, I heard about the Chain Gang when that same summer of '71. That June, I left California and I went back to Chicago to, just hang out with my class that was graduating at 8th grade graduation. I had graduated from Monroe, so I went back to hang out with them. When I got back, like around the end of August, that's when I started hearing about the Chain Gang, and they wasn't really going by the Chain Gang at that time. It was going by they was called the Dirty Dozen.
Where does the term Dirty Dozens come from?
Well, the Dirty Dozen, it was a handful of guys. It was like 12 guys, so they kind of took that name from a movie, I believe it was, that Dirty Dozen movie. But the Dirty Dozen really, once it got going, because actually when I got to Morningside in 9th grade, the Dirty Dozen was already together. The Dirty Dozen, which consisted of my big homie, which I could more or less consider the leader, was Red Jefferson. Was actually the father of Richard Jefferson, the basketball player from the NBA, and Horace Ringo, Harold Ringo, Larry Drawhorn, Ronald Carr, see, Wesley Logan, Davion, Jan Brewer, Big Red. Well, you call him Dirty Red. It was because we had two Reds, Red Jefferson, and then we had the other Red, which became Dirty Red. Eddie Linscomb, and let's see who else was there. Greg Goff and Colonel Jackson. But while I was at Monroe, though, I went to school with the guys that eventually ended up becoming the ones that were more associated and more famous as far as like the when they changed over to the Inglewood family, and that was Dirty Red, Nasty Ed, and Jan Brewer, which were the guys that most people knew about, but they were like younger. I didn't get a chance to meet Jan until I say around September of '71, because he was in camp when I got there. When I got to Monroe, and he didn't get out. He didn't get out until late that summer, end of summer. They pretty much drafted me in because of my reputation that I had from when I was over at Monroe, and I actually got teased by one of the sisters that was named Rita Carr, which was Ronald Carr's sister. She said, "Now that y'all got him, it's gonna have to be the Dirty Baker's dozen." So she made a joke out of it, but it was all good, And at that same time, that's when they named me the leader of the baby Chain Gang. I was given that responsibility.
Okay, so that's the first time I heard of the baby Chain Gang. Do you know the other SInbad?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I know him. He was a little shorty at the time. I rode the street with his brother. As a matter of fact, his oldest brother was one of the Dirty Dozen too. I forgot him. That was Chris. And then he had another brother, Alden, and a third brother that was older than him, Ori. And I kind of hung out with all three of them. But I do know him. It's kind of funny because I didn't know that he was using that name until like in the 90s, when one of the guys in the neighborhood was telling me, said, "Yeah, I just got through talking to SInbad." And I'm like, "You talking to who?" He said, "SInbad." I'm like, what you talking about? You talking to SInbad? That's my name. So, I didn't think no more about it until I started seeing your videos. And then when I saw who it was, I kind of laughed again because I was like, "Oh man, that's my homeboy's little brother," which is all good. It's like you go to East LA, you got Big Joker, Little Joker, so it really don't matter, as long as it's somebody that's in that circle that's using that name, it's all good.
Right. All right. So, what was the Chain Gang really all about when you joined?
The Chain Gang basically, it was more or less. I got to give sisters their props too, because we had several sisters that was involved, and that was like Ursula Sandifer, Joyce Jackson, Faye Jackson, Stella, which was Joyce's sister, Tamala, and Calandria, which was Jan Brewer's sister, but she wasn't really the type of girl that would fight, but she was there, and a girl named Tamala, and another one named Donis. The reason why I give them their props was because they was always with us wherever we went. If we went to the show, if we went to the beach, they was always there with us. And if something went down, I guarantee they was right in the middle of it. As far as like, throwing hands. I've seen guys run before they ran. So those sisters were down. They was down with us, and I got to show some love to them. But the Chain Gang itself, it was more or less a situation that occurred because, like I said, the Crip situation started, from my knowledge now, it started on the east side and worked its way west. So before the Crips had kicked in, there was another gang, a little small gang called the Smacks, that was coming out of that same neighborhood that was close to Washington High School. But I think the majority of those guys were like junior high school age, going toward high school. And but see, one of the reasons why we started doing that was because of, it was a lot of movie theaters in Inglewood. You had the Imperial show that was on Imperial and Crenshaw. You had the Academy show on Manchester and Crenshaw, and that farther down on Manchester and Fifth Avenue was a Fifth Avenue show, and a few downtown. But we didn't really go to those early on because that's pretty much where the white people went. So we was going hanging out at the other shows. On the same token, LA had a couple of shows that was close on Imperial. It was a show on Imperial and Western, and it was another show on Vermont and Imperial, where most of your West Side Crips hung out. So that's one of the things that would happen. We would get into fights at the show, and it really didn't have a name, but it eventually did get a name. So like I said, it started out as a Dirty Dozen, and I don't think it evolved into the Chain Gang until we started using chains as a mode of fighting, to protect ourselves because we was basically outnumbered.
Is that where the name Chain Gang comes from?
That's part of it.
Okay.
That's part of it.
What type of chains were you guys using?
Bicycle chain, the kind of chain that you lock your bike up with the lock on the end. Yeah, go to the hardware store, man, and get you about 3 feet of that. And I kept a chain in my pocket every day, even at school. I always had 3 feet of chain in my pocket.
You mentioned the Smacks. What can you tell me about them?
For the most part, I believe the Smacks were coming from, they were like the younger brothers, man, that was coming out from Henry Clay Junior High School. And the difference between LA junior high schools and Inglewood is that LA junior high schools went up to 9th grade, and Inglewood junior high schools was just 7th and 8th grade. So we started high school in 9th grade. And but like I said, that year, a lot of those guys were transitioning over from the 9th grade that was getting ready to go to Washington. And geographically, Washington High School and Morningside High School are about a mile apart. I mean, they within walking distance from each other. And so it was always some issues going on, especially on 108th Street, because it was a dividing line between LA and Inglewood on that side of town, which was Van Ness. And so if you was on one side of Van Ness, it was LA, and the other side was Inglewood. So it was always some skirmishes going on, from guys on one side of the street to the next. The same thing, just like it was things going on Florence, when you had the guys on that end of Inglewood that was, battling with the guys that lived on the other side of Florence. So, that was and that's probably, I believe, is still an ongoing situation right to this day. You're talking about almost 50 years.
So you lived on the south side of Manchester?
Yes, I did. I lived closer to Century Boulevard. I lived on 11th Avenue and Century. So
basically you had either two sections of Chain Gang and Inglewood Family?
Okay, here's what it was. The Chain Gang was everybody. That was everybody from the north side of Manchester and the south side of Manchester, because prior to them making that separation, as far as the school board made a separation, and I believe it was 71 is when that separation kicked in, where anybody that was north of Manchester, they had to go to Inglewood High School, and anybody that was south of Manchester had to go to Morningside. That's off of Crenshaw. But you did have an option, if you chose that option, to go to either school if you lived close to Manchester. Now, we was all together prior to 71, because it was the majority of the black kids went to Morningside and Monroe. After 71, they started letting the black kids go to Inglewood and the Crozier Junior High School, which was close to Inglewood.
So Inglewood Family would have two different paths, basically.
All right. Look at it like this: the Chain Gang was all one big gang, and eventually, when we changed the name, and the reason we changed the name was we was basically trying to get the name gang out of it. And that was that situation where, you know, we had just talked about it. We said, well, you know, what we gonna do? If we drop the name Chain, I mean the gang, we still got the chain. So now what? So it was just something that we had been floating around trying to figure out what we was gonna do with it. And I think a major influence and what actually became our theme song was the song Family Affair, which was from the Sly and the Family Stone. And I believe that was a major influence on the name of which we eventually started calling it the Family.
And what year was this? About 73?
I believe that was about, it could have been 72 or 72, maybe the end of 72 or either 73, around there. Because right prior to that is a situation we had when we met the Denver Lanes, the original Denver Lanes, and they came to a party in Inglewood, and we had a little skirmish going on because they thought we was Crips, and we thought they was Crips. So when everybody was like, hey, what y'all, y'all always starting stuff. So then when the guy was like, wait a minute, we ain't no Crips, was like, we not either. So that night we kind of formed a little bond, but as time went on, we definitely formed a bigger bond. And the original guys that I kind of socialized with from the Denver Lanes was Bean, which I considered the leader of the Denver Lanes at that time, Slim, and his sidekick Will. But one of the coldest gangsters that I ever had associated with in my life was with them, and that was Michael Berry. And Michael Berry was no joke. He was serious about his banging. And that cat never smiled, and he was hard, man. I mean, he was hardcore. But the family eventually got segregated into two different cliques. We all fell under the same umbrella, but you had the Inglewood family, and then you had Morningside family. Now, Morningside family, that was my boys. Like I said, that's where most of the Dirty Dozen went. And then with the Inglewood family, that's when you had Eddie, Nasty Ed, Big Red, Mad Scientist. Let's see, Jan. I can't really say about Jan because I don't know if Jan went to Inglewood or not, because he was always having problems. I don't know if he went to school over there or not. Magoo. Let's see who else was over there. Speedy was over there, which was another one of my good homies. Rest in peace. Now, let's see. Oh man, it was just too many. There was just too many to mention. But the Inglewood boys and my boys, like I said, we did things, but a lot of stuff we was fighting on two fronts. Like I said, we dealing with, at Morningside, we were dealing with the guys coming from Washington, and with the guys on the north side of Inglewood, they was dealing with guys coming like from the 60s area and the A-Trays, which they weren't called A-Trays at the time, or 60s, they were just called West Side Crips.
When did you first hear of Little Caesar?
I heard of Caesar through Big Red, Dirty Red. I'll say that had to be around, I don't know, 73, somewhere around there, 74 maybe. I couldn't really pinpoint that.
So when you coming out the 90s, did you guys claim any streets or any blocks?
Yeah, we had a set called the Atkinson Boys, and I gotta mention them because they were part of the Morningside Family Gang, and that was consisted of Steve Taylor, Stanley Taylor, his little brother Larry Taylor, the twins Terry and Tarsi, Donald Francis, Big 5-0, Big John, Kelton Hood, and the brother that had the best hands that I ever saw was a guy named Chucky. Man, it was that really could throw some hands.
A lot of you guys could get down. Did you have any background in boxing or karate?
Actually, I did have a background in martial arts. I started taking judo and karate lessons at age 10 while I was living in Chicago. But as far as the boxing and the fighting and all that stuff goes, man, growing up in Chicago, you basically have to figure out what's going on, man. I'm saying by the time I jumped out of kindergarten, going to the first grade, you had to either be part of something or you was gonna get ran over. So I kind of chose to take that route as far as I wanted to be, do what I was gonna do and have fun doing it. So I kind of hung out with the bad boys, if you can say that. And but I tell you, one of the coldest and the bloodiest gang fights that I ever been involved in happened in grade school. I was I'm gonna say about 10 years old at the time, and it was two cats that was trying to fight to see who was gonna be the king of the school. Now there was two different gangs there. You had the Prince Racketeers and you had the Imperials that we called the Imps, and I was part of the Prince Racketeers group. So these two cats were fighting, a guy named Wendell and another cat named Donald Archie. So they got into the fight. Wendell was winning. Donald reached in the garbage can and pulled out a pop bottle and broke it and slashed him all the way across his chest from one side to the other. I mean, went straight through his leather coat. Blood skirted out everywhere, so the fight stopped, And but that in itself, man, we used to practice fighting. We used to practice gang fighting. How you keep cats off of you, and we literally practiced that all the time. Because back in the old days, that's what you did. You had what they call rumbles back in the day. You got your boys on one side, I got my boys on the other side, and we just fight it out. And it eventually evolved into something entirely different. As time went on.
What can you tell me about the Black Karate Federation back then?
Okay, the Black Karate Federation, it was a karate studio on, it was 102nd and Western, and at the time it was started by a guy named Stu DeJong and Ron Chappelle, and I mean it was really a good thing, because basically people was really hyped up on the karate tip, after the Green Hornet came out with Bruce Lee, and a lot of Bruce Lee movies came out. Karate was big. I mean, Jim Kelly had studios all over town. Chuck Norris had studios, but the BKF was really a good thing because it taught you really a lot of discipline, and later on it would change my life as far as my interpretation on how I view just dealing with black people, and how that was one of the things that actually made me walk away from the whole situation as far as gangbang was concerned. But I had to be out there in the street a few years in order to get that out of my system.
So did you train with other gang members, Crips or Bloods, at BKF?
That part, I know it was a few guys from Inglewood there, but as far as gangbangers were concerned, I really don't know. I don't remember if any chain gang was there at the time.
What started the beef between West Side Crips and the Chain Gang?
The first fight I remember was we were all at the Imperial Theater one Saturday, and the West Side Crips just came to turn it out.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Douglas Green?
Yes, yeah. Douglas Green. He was one of the brothers. He got shot and killed. As a matter of fact, he was the first guy in Inglewood to get shot and killed. That was on the Damu side. That was really set off a real chain of events, man. That really rocked the whole city of Inglewood. It was a bad scene. He was the first. After he passed, one of the other brothers that was instrumental, he was one of the original Chain Gang members. He got ran over by a car that wasn't gang related. And one of the first Inglewood Crips that got killed, he got shot, he got killed. A guy named Steve Slaughter, he got killed at a party party one night.
Okay, so Douglas Green was killed in 1972, I believe. How much sooner or later did it switch over from Chain Gang to Inglewood Family?
Oh boy, I'm gonna say it might have been about another year. Because if you look at the timeline like that, because when that situation happened, like I said, a lot of hell broke out, and the brother named Enoch that I was telling you about just mentioned that had got ran over. He was with us that night when we went out, trying to, basically doing stupid shit, trying to get revenge. But it was a good thing we didn't find anybody that night.
Okay, now when y'all cross over, did you guys have meetings back then?
We didn't really have, just say like it wasn't no set day like some, say like, okay, we're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday. It would just be some impromptu thing that would pop up and say, yeah, well, we all gonna be up at Darby Park, and it would happen. It wasn't like there was anything scheduled that we did every week.
Would it be safe to say Darby Park was one of the mutual stomping grounds for the two sides of Inglewood Family?
Oh, without a doubt, that was the ground zero.
Okay,
that was ground zero for the Chain Gang for sure, and that was without a doubt. Okay. That was our park. And wasn't nobody else coming in that park.
Okay, now you mentioned a friendship with the Denver Lanes. Was it any other communities or gangs that you guys was tight with before the wars really got big in the infancy stages? Okay,
in the infancy stages, we got affiliated with the Athens Park Boys, and that was through a couple of guys that had came to Morningside, Mouse. And Mousy and a guy named Rebel Plumber. We got affiliated with the Brims. Can't forget them, the Brims. That was more or less because it was a couple of guys, a couple of Chain Gang members who had family members that were Brims. One of the guys, actually, his cousin was Big Country and Little Country. So I got a chance. Little Country got killed. I didn't get a chance to meet him. But I did get a chance to meet Big Country, and then you had Mickey from Six Deuce Browns, and now those numbers I'm throwing out, those numbers didn't exist at early on because they were just going by Browns, and a lot of people say that Pyru's was the first blood set. I don't know about that, but I do know the first blood set that I remember hearing about was the Browns.